It's tractor show season again. I took this one to some shows last year. It's a 1961 wheel horse, model 401. I cleaned it up a couple years ago. If you're interested in that, there's about 20 videos on my channel you can watch about taking this tractor apart, cleaning it, and fixing things. This engine is harder to start than it should be, especially on hot days. So my plan here was to mess with the carburetor to see if I can fix that. I noticed that the fuel bowl was not all the way full, and when I checked the shutoff valve, I didn't close the valve for winter storage like I should have. So there's two things there: an open fuel valve and a partially full fuel bowl. Means there's probably no fuel in the tank at all. Yeah, the tank's empty. I'm gonna rig up this light bulb so you can see it. Now the reason I'm pointing all this out is that I didn't drain this tank when I put the tractor away for the season. It probably had a quarter tank of fuel, maybe less, but that's probably not going to evaporate over the winter. So now you got to be careful and look for a bigger issue. If the needle and seat's letting fuel leak by the carburetor, sometimes it ends up in the crankcase, so let's check for that. Well, the oil looks mighty thin. It almost drips like water, and I can smell gasoline. So there's the full mark. Sometimes it's hard to see, so you can touch it on some paper. It's a little bit over the full mark. I'm going to drain the oil and see what that looks like. I'll put the front on blocks to make sure it all drains. There it is. Probably looks like oil on camera, but it flows like water and smells like gas. I'll put some good oil in it. Then I'll have to get into the carburetor and clean or replace the needle and seat. So if you notice your gasoline is gone, make sure it's not in the crankcase before you start the engine. If you're wondering how gas makes its way to the crankcase, this is an old 4 horsepower Kohler block from the parts pile. The top hole is where the carburetor mounts. If your needle and seat in the carburetor has a slight leak, the fuel level rises until it gets high enough to trickle over the edge there. Now it can go through the valve guide next to the valve stem, and it ends up in the valve spring area, where there's a hole that has to be there to let oil drain back to the crankcase. I don't think this is a Kohler design problem, because if the engine was sitting level, the fuel would run out the air cleaner side, not into the engine. But since wheel horse frames are higher in the front than in the rear, the engine leans back enough that the fuel can go into the engine instead of out the air cleaner. All you can do is turn off the fuel valve under the tank whenever your tractor's not going to be started for a while. Just as a side note, the reason this engine's in the parts pile is because somebody shipped it to me in a cardboard box with newspapers around it. You know your package is supposed to be able to withstand a 2 or 3 foot drop, or it's not packaged correctly. So don't ship your engine in a cardboard box unless it's surrounded with hard foam or some type of support structure. Alright, that's it.